Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for CDW Canada's Innovative Backup Solutions webinar. Today, we'll be going over the demands of emerging technologies in multi-cloud data environments. Just a few housekeeping items before we begin. If you do have any content-related questions during the webinar, please feel free to drop us a note in the Q&A. We'll get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar, and any that we don't get to, we will follow up afterwards. Next, we will be recording the webinar, so please reach out to your account manager if you'd like us to send you a copy, or if you'd like to continue today's conversation and uncover how CDW can assist your business with your IT needs. Now, I'd like to introduce our speakers for today, Massimo Mauro and Greg Shepard. With over 15 years' experience, Massimo is a results-driven solution architect, specializing in data center solutions such as modern cloud platforms, disaster recovery, and security for Fortune 500 companies. Massimo qualifies and aligns client business requirements to leading solutions that leverage industry best practices while architecting the blueprints that maximize efficiency with focus on fault prevention versus fault recovery. With over 3 years' experience, Greg Shepard has delved deep into the data center and is well-versed in virtualization, backup, and hyperconverged solutions. Greg holds many technical VMware certifications and several sales certs across CDW's large portfolio of products. And with that, Massimo and Greg, over to you.
Thank you, Michael, for that introduction. I understand we have a large audience out there. Thank you for joining our webinar on Master of Disaster, which will encompass backup, recovery, and business continuity. Our agenda for today, there we go, we'll be taking a vendor agnostic approach because it's very specific to your backup needs. And this is a very large topic. So what you'll see that's listed up on the slide is we'll go through these in various detail, and we'll deal with industry best practices. So data growth. We create loads of data. We create 2.5 quintillion bytes of data a day, according to IBM. The data market is valuable. The data sources added daily, creating exponential data growth. Examples such as cloud, mobility, IoT, machine learning, AI, social media, and analytics are really driving this force around data growth. The data analytics market is likely will be worth about $203 billion by 2020 in accordance to IDC. We create more data now than ever. So in 2016, 90% of the world's data, that's 90% of all data ever created, has been created in the previous 2 years, according to IBM. Consumers aren't only the ones creating data. Business are churning a lot of data as well. The data created and gathered has massive value in business intelligence. This massive data growth has steered tech companies to develop new technologies that aid in the management, protection, and compliance of our data while providing deeper insights and understanding the trends that they can reveal. So why should you care? Essentially, most businesses are data-driven. Think of data as your currency and competitive advantage in the marketplace. So you must try to protect and reduce the attack surface to ensure that your data is safe, resilient, and meets business objectives. Sure, you have good governance model in place, and data protection is usually a layered approach. It's part of your security posture. So here's some statistical information. So we've compiled an interesting mix of disaster recovery statistics from a variety of sources, from technology companies to mainstream media. If you'll see the hardware failure in this particular case is one of the highest ratios in terms of downtime, power loss, data corruption, you sort of get the idea. And external security breaches, we can't forget internal like rogue admins and things of that nature. So if and when you have the wherewithal to design your solution to be redundant or resilient from inception, you could reduce or eliminate most of these challenges. Some startling statistics here. You can see that 93% of companies without DR that suffer data disaster are out of business within 1 year. I'm not so sure that the next one is a startling statistic, but I mean, it's good news that 96% of businesses with a DR solution in place fully recover operations, right? So in the past 5 years, 50% of companies experienced downtime in the event that was, longer than a full workday. I for one, have been at customer sites and have seen this from time to time, and I've seen the implications and how expensive and costly this can be. Consider the labor force operations just kind of standing around with nothing to do if there's nothing in place, and the potential loss of opportunity in business. So some of the other stats include, more than 50% don't have enough budget to recover from an attack. 75% of small businesses have no business continuity in place. So this is, an area that certainly needs to be addressed. So ransomware. This is, so there's predictions indicate organizations globally will suffer a ransomware attack every 14 seconds by 2019, as cited by Accenture in a recent report on cybercrime. You might not think that your business is a target for ransomware. Ransomware usually targets the user community. Nearly every successful attack relies on compromising an endpoint. Most organizations have some form of endpoint protection deployed. You'll need to take a layered approach to the issue by reducing the attack surface, by implementing best practices, and within backup. Some common entry points, of course, you'll see some unsuspecting emails with links and attachments, and some are very obvious, and some not so much. They're getting really, really good. It's a very lucrative business, so it certainly continues to grow. Vulnerabilities within your browser, operating systems, make sure that you're practicing good patching methods. IAM, Messenger, and infected links, things of that nature. So ensure that your workforce, your staff, the user community is trained to not simply just trust everything that comes in and gets by, maybe some of your security and how to look at these things and address them as needed. Ransomware. So it's become, as mentioned, it's become a lucrative business for cyber criminals, and it's not showing any signs of dying off. This timeline demonstrates ransomware discoveries from 2012 to 2017. You can see a proliferation of attack methods and how they are always changing and adapting to vulnerabilities. It's important that we remain vigilant as an organization. So again, please train the user community and maintain your system's integrity to the best of your ability. Best way to protect yourself from the effects of ransomware is to ensure you have multiple copies of data backed up in secure locations while implementing a solid disaster recovery plan. Damages surrounding the ransomware. Downtime costs, you'll get the idea here. Downtime costs range from $5,000 to $20,000 a day in lost business and damages. Cybersecurity ventures estimate the global spending on associated products and services will exceed $1 trillion in the period between 2017 and 2021. Another recent report by CyberEdge Group citing that 1,200 IT security professionals around the world claim that the average IT security budget will rise by 4.7% in 2018 to constitute 12% of the total IT spend. Compliance is whether you're asserted to or not, you should follow the practice, good governance around compliance, right? So protecting individuals' privacy, such as compliance, such as the PII, GDPR. So really, it's just building privacy by design workflows into the systems from the start and documenting them. Knowing where the individual's data resides when a request to be forgotten is put in place, and ensuring when you're storing that data that was removed, it doesn't make it back into the systems. So some of the questions to consider when dealing with compliance is where does the data live? You know, what applications? It could be a third-party application. You're still responsible for that whether you're asserted to or not. How it's governed, how it's protected, how it's consumed, how it's served. So where to start? So to begin, you must first create a backup and recovery plan to identify and prioritize applications based on criticality. This process is accomplished by defining your application's RPO and RTO. For those of you that don't know, what is our RPO? So RPO, or recovery point objective, is focused on data and your company's loss tolerance in relation to your data. RPO is determined by looking at the time between data backups and the amount of data that could be lost in between backups. As part of a business continuity planning, you need to establish how long you can afford to operate without that data or service before the business suffers. That time becomes your RPO and should become the indicator of how often you back up your data. If you find that your business can survive 3 or 4 days in between backups, then more likely your RPO would be 3 days, the shortest time between those backups. RTO, or recovery time objectives, is the target time you set for the recovery of your IT and business activities after disaster has struck. The goal here is to calculate how quickly you need to recover, which can then dictate the preparations you need to implement along with the overall budget you should assign to business continuity. If, for example, you find your RTO is 5 hours, meaning your business can survive with systems down for this amount of time, then you'll need to ensure you have a high level of readiness with a higher budget to ensure systems can be recovered quickly. On the other hand, if you have an RTO of about 2 weeks, you can probably budget less and invest in less advanced solutions. The general rule of thumb is lower RPOs and RTOs are more expensive as they require greater availability of your data and services. So through this exercise, you'll more likely find it's beneficial. You'll find some holes and weaknesses within your infrastructure and vulnerabilities that you can easily address. Industry best practice is implementing the 3-2-1 rule. So for those currently seeking a backup and recovery solution, or not making use of the 3-2-1 rule as a concept, you should be mindful of, it's the current best practice for data backup and recovery. It's important to get into a habit of utilizing this highly effective strategy, right? So what is the 3-2-1 backup rule? So you should always keep 3 copies of your data, so the original copy and 2 backup copies locally, and obviously another copy off-sited. So 2 copies that store 2 copies of different types of storage media, example, disk and tape is just a few to mention. And the one rule, keep a copy off-site in the event of a disaster, could quickly wipe out your locally stored information if that data was stored on two separate devices. This is why you must back up your data and keep it off-site. So why is this relevant? There are many cases of data loss. By implementing the 3-2-1 rule, you can effectively implement preventative measures to avoid future data loss. This could be the deciding factor between a company's failure or long-term success. It's important to view your data as investment capital. So here's how you would go about implementing. So it's really the tiering details and understanding your business and the processes around that, right? So if you think of tiering in terms of tier 1 to tier 4 solutions, so you think of RPOs, and RTOs are essentially 0. You're really looking at an active solution. And then, looking at a tier 2 type of solution is more of a replication, and that can be anywhere from an RPO of 0 to 15 minutes, and you're able to tolerate these systems being in an RTO of about 4 hours. And then if you get into applications, that backup, just straightforward backup, whether it be disk or local storage, more likely an RPO of about 12 to 24 hours and an RTO of about 24 hours. Then when you get into maybe tape, kind of consider this as point of last resort, long-term retentions, maybe compliances requiring to store 7 years of data. You're probably not going there. You need to consider in the event of a failure, this is enough time to actually get you up and running. If it's just data that you need to retrieve for compliance reasons, it may do the trick. So really, it depends on your critical applications to get you up and running. So that would be maybe your tier 1 tier, and then of course you go down along the lines in terms of applications and criticality. So, conducting a business impact analysis and understanding how it runs. This is something that we certainly can help you with. This is the broader scope of how this works, and consider your business and assess the risk and tier your applications accordingly, right? So you see on the right side, the slide, you see always available, you see tier 0 type of thing, which sort of falls into the tier 1 category as well as mission critical. Perhaps you have a run book that allows you to have these systems up and running while you're spending time. You have more time to get the lesser business critical systems up and running, right? So they fall into a lower tier. So again, criticality and cost, you can see the significance of how that goes along the side. The human resource factor, of course, make sure that there's dependencies along with these systems, right? So make sure you capture this information and their dependencies, because as long as your critical systems are up and there's maybe a finite amount of resources you need to access these systems, whether it be your customers or operations or people that run the business, make sure they're accounted for and they know what to do in the event of a disaster. Application mapping, so ensure you understand and have identified all your applications. There isn't a rogue system out there that just wasn't accounted for. If you're not testing your disaster recovery plans, and if that system hasn't been accounted for, well, then it's probably more than likely going to fail. So you have to ensure that you're practicing these to ensure that everything's been captured within your run book. The second approach is to identify the best solution possible. Of course, there's not one solution that fits all. That's something that will emerge from this business impact analysis. So here's where the lines can get a bit blurred and various technologies can be leveraged. Again, it's a layered approach. So if you think of, I'll try to, and this is pretty high level because it can be presented in many ways. This is backup and recovery, disaster recovery, and business continuity scenarios that I'll try to define here. So, given the example on screen, you have your on-prem solution. Perhaps you have some virtualized solutions along with some physical servers. That seems to be the norm. And you have some sort of repositories that you're backing up to tape or disk, or maybe potentially offsite in this particular case. If you think of what you're really restoring here from a backup perspective, I would say upwards of 90% of the time, even though your retention period may be locally 30 days, you're probably restoring something that was deleted, a file that was deleted, or maybe a virtual machine instance that needs, within the last, up to 3 days, I would say. So that would probably address your backup requirements. If you're going back 30 days, I don't know how likely you're doing that. It's probably unlikely. So, what does that look like for disaster recovery? This doesn't really meet the 3-2-1 rule, as we mentioned in the aforementioned slide. So what we have here is on-prem and maybe a hybrid type of solution that can be introduced. So this can be coming in various other locations, recovery environments, hot sites, and you can use various technologies or data movers that really suit your RPO, RTO, as mentioned. So it can be an active solution, as we said. So an RPO and RTO is about 0. So these are completely active. So one site goes down, the other site's available. Of course, you can have your replication of virtualized servers. SRM is an example here. This is one of the examples that are here. It's replicated over. Storage replication is happening at whatever interval is chosen. Let's say it's 15 minutes. It's replicating over. And then, of course, your VM, very, very small configuration file, is being replicated over as well. And at time of test or disaster, that's really when these come into effect. So you're seeding this all the time, and then, of course, you're testing this at time of test and disaster. The other things is maybe physical to virtual. These are highly effective solutions that are out there. You're just replicating some of your physical servers over to a virtual environment of critical systems that finite number of critical systems that you identified, and ensure that you're testing this and ensure that the human resources or your customers are able to access this. So testing is paramount. You can accomplish all of this in a cloud. Very highly effective solutions, cloud solutions out there as well as an alternate location as well. Does this really embody the 3-2-1 rule? In a sense, yes, it does. So you think of your on-prem solution, you have your three data copies, and then you're on different media, and then you're offsiting somehow, some other location. And then, of course, it can be another location. If you don't have another one, there's all cloud solutions which are very OpEx driven, and so that addresses the rule. But what happens in the event or uneventful time that your primary site goes down? So in certain circumstances, it depends how the content's being served. In an active scenario, your content is up and running. We know that, we understand that. If your runbook is good, your SRM, is going to reassign IPs and that. Hopefully, some of that DNS is cut over internally. That DNS is done for you. So this can happen. But what's missing here? If for instance, it's a cloud-based solution, how do you access this data? If you're on a single site and you have just a cloud solution and that site goes down, is there a business continuity in place? Is it captured within your runbook where the human resources are accounted for and how they can access this? So again, whether it be maybe you have a mobile location, maybe it's a work from home type of scenario where they're able to VPN into this and gain access to this data, or there's what's called work group recovery. If you haven't heard of this, these are offerings that are subscription-based or dedicated, depending on what best suits the needs of your business. Essentially, this is an alternate location. When you declare a disaster, you can go to this location, and they'll have systems up and running for you. This is an example, probably an extreme example. I like this. This is a mobile data center, and this is something that obviously can be used. So when an alternate location is not an option, a workplace recovery is critical for your business. It ensures that you'll maintain your operations with as little downtime as possible. They can help create, the right plan to fit your needs, flexible workplace recovery options. So what sort of things, as mentioned previously, so there's dedicated, which whether that's dedicated to you, you declare, it's available for you. Subscription-based is a little different. It's a little more cost effective because it's oversubscribed. So if you feel that the risk is, you fall within a risk profile that it maybe is not so widespread, and you're the first to declare, that space is available to you. So the type of things that you can expect from these workplace recoveries is essentially carrier-grade connectivity. They'll do inclusive tests. They'll access to a fully set up laptops with your company image within 24 hours or less, depending on what was negotiated and depending on what makes sense for your business. So a predefined recovery brief, so a runbook, inclusive printing, photocopying, things of that nature that sustains the business. Virtual PBX as well, so direct dialing and DDIs and that. So while you're looking for an alternate space or getting things up and running, this is how you can sustain your business model. Now, I'm going to hand this over to my colleague, Greg.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. My name is Greg Shepard again, as mentioned earlier. Just some things I wanted to mention, bringing this back up as recovering the business continuity. What's interesting about this slide is that it's kind of basic, but it kind of shows how technology advances faster than how humans can adapt to it. Where we are, it's kind of showing like where businesses currently are. There's very few businesses that are on literally the cutting edge of technology, but it is, trickling down to the small and medium businesses as time goes on. Something that's interesting also about this is, with the rise of all these technologies such as IoT, data analytics, machine learning, AI, blockchain, even smart chatbots, and eventually 5G, data explosion is going to happen. If you're not competitive, by implementing all these technologies, your competition will be. So think about that, where your place is in the market. Another thing is, with all this data growth, there is some positive sides to this. Some of the backup technologies have been keeping in pace, as well as the cost of SSDs have come down, as well as the capacities on them have exploded. So seeing a small or medium business with a petabyte of data is not a problem anymore. With a lot of legacy technologies, managing that amount of data, depending on what you're using, it can't scale. So what you want to do is utilize technologies, whether it's on-prem, in cloud, maybe a combination, maybe a colo. With CDW, we like to take the hybrid approach. We like to try to use the best of everything instead of just going on one platform. we find that's very effective for our customers. As well as mentioned earlier, ransomware is wreaking havoc. It's quite crippling if you don't have a good backup in place, as that's probably the #1 defense against ransomware. Your security is obviously super important and should not be disregarded, but you should be proactive and reactive. Reactive being, having a good backup in place that's safe from these types of attacks. So that being said, another thing I mentioned is, downtime has a very expensive cost. It can be from hundreds of dollars per hour to hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour. One analytic or stat on the car industry, which is probably the most common one used, is 1 minute of downtime costs $22,000 on average. And that's not even the cost if you associate, reputation, reputation hits, or what the lost productivity. Lost productivity has a huge financial impact. Yeah, you might be back up and running, but people now have to catch up. And catching up can now interrupt, what's currently active too. So downtime has a rolling effect, and it should not be, disregarded. And looking at the cost of your downtime, maybe that could be to help you determine, how much is it worth it to spend on a backup solution, as well as business continuity and DR. So here we have just a snapshot of some of our biggest partners that we have in the space. You might recognize quite a few of them, Veeam, Commvault, Carbonite, ArcServe, Dell EMC, VMware, Unitrends, just to name a few. We have many more as well. This is just what we said on the slide. And that being said, CW has a vast amount of partnerships, as I mentioned, with the largest players in the industry. Because of that, we have flexibility to build a solution that fits your needs. We have a full team of agnostic architects to size and build for you. And we have many service partners to help you migrate, deploy, and even manage any solution. Because of our success in Canada as well as global, it's in the U.S. and we've even expanded worldwide, we have a lot of resources at our disposal. And we just wanted to, this isn't the end, but just kind of the end of the PowerPoint. We just wanted to give you your badge of distinction for, Master of Disaster. Thought this was a really cool badge to come up with, and we want to make sure that you guys are equipped with the knowledge and tools and resources that you need to properly build out, a solution that works for you. We have some questions that were sent to us, and some stuff we wanted to cover.
Yeah, so there's a question on backing up Office 365 and why that might be important. So I think there's a misconception on what Microsoft does in terms of backing up Office 365. So, for example, they're very good at keeping it available, but in terms of some of their built-in policies, let's say, for example, if an email is mistakenly or maliciously deleted. So first line of defense is it goes into a recoverable items queue, which has a default policy of about 14 days, can be expanded to about 13 days. The issue here is you need to be aware, and the fact that it is either mistakenly or maliciously deleted, you're not aware. So that policy is probably not going to help you. There's also what's called litigation hold, which is problematic because you need to place all the users in litigation hold. Probably breaks compliance because your backups are kept on your production platform. So if anyone with regards to that, so you can use their backup solutions out there. Then of course whether there be an ISP vendors that really lend themselves to getting that granular, fine-grained restores from user mailbox, contacts, things of that nature that really can't be accomplished through the native burnt-in tools with Office 365. let me see, some of the other questions here that I see is, I'm not sure. What is the virtualization trend? Is Veeam going to continue to maintain and go to product? That's difficult to answer. Really, I can't foresee where they're going, but I would hope that they remain competitive and move as technology advances. So it's really kind of depends on them. I really can't speak to that. Cloud backup, a good option these days? Absolutely. You need to be mindful of ingress and egress. And, not all, if you're dealing with hyperscalers, it's usually free to upload your data. It's just be mindful that they do charge to get your data out. These are OpEx type solutions. They're very turnkey and very, very good solutions. Absolutely. What else do we have here? So, curious about other companies and how they're doing to control cloud storage backups. Again, there are providers that are out there that can, along with some of the vendors in the aforementioned slide, that can do this, that can get your data. So, of course, this is beyond the resilience that's built into a cloud. Do your solutions include offerings for SMBs with budget constraints? Absolutely. I would say even if you can't follow best practices, having a backup solution in place, just have something at the very least. And that really is an individual based cases based on your requirements. We'll address them as needed, but of course, all these solutions are really addressed to the broad market range of SMB to mid to enterprise and global scale customers. Benefits of hardware solutions. Absolutely. So there's one that comes to mind. Hardware solutions. So if you think of all the an appliance-based approach, such as maybe hyper-converged, infinite scale, secondary type of storage. Think of your secondary, not your primary storage, right? So a lot of these systems are disparate and siloed in terms of management, in terms of capability, such as maybe your backup system, your dev test, file share, analytics platform, things to name a few. What you can do with these solutions, they all require some form of hardware storage that may not get utilized to its utmost efficiency. Now, for example, backup solution requires backup software, media, servers, and master servers, target storage, and licensing, things of that nature. Right? So backup platform is siloed from your dev test, file share, analytics platform, and potentially your storage gateway for cloud archiving. So this creates inefficiencies. So think of global dedupes. These are individually siloed. So you're going to get really deduped at the backup infrastructure, at the analytics or dev test. So you're not really getting full value out of that. So it's very your data gets fragmented. There's a lot of dark data in terms of depending on how long it's been archived. So you're not really taking advantage of the analytics potential there unless you're really ingesting all of this. So in this particular case, you get a backup platform that's siloed, where you can get these scale-out type of appliances where you can replace all these and consolidate all these platforms. because they scale out infinitely. They have different types of storage in there. They have replication factors of 2, and maybe your entry point is your backup repositories, and eventually you're replacing your media servers, and then of course get rid of your dev test environment, and then now you can run dev tests right off this platform. You can then get rid of your backup software at one point in time, and then utilize the backup software that's burned into these solutions, and of course your analytics platform, where you now have access to all of these. And imagine what your global dedupe will be like when it's all consolidated under this platform. So, and if you think of the system, how it scales, you can have a VSA in your cloud and do replication to it if you're concerned with maybe your one site going down. So there are many solutions that can handle these appliance-based solutions can handle these. What other questions do we have? Are there any other questions? Thank you. So, one of the strategies to deal with ransomware. So remember, the 3-2-1 rule. I think we've really addressed that ad nauseum. The 3-2-1 rule, along with encryption, you're golden. Right, that's really reducing that attack surface and educating your user base. That's more than likely their entry point. So if you've got that covered, I think your risk profile is minimized substantially. And I'm not sure if there are any further questions. I think that we're good to wrap this up. So thank you again. I'm trusting CDW as your #1 solution provider. We hope to see you in our next webinar. Thank you.